Hey, Uncle Mark.
Yeah. Hey, what's up?
Have you ever had the impulse, as you were, have you ever
you're going to be more specific.
Yes, you've had some impulses. I know that. You have impulse control problems. But have you ever had the impulse when you're, like, reading a thing to go, this is too easy?
Never.
This is just...
never, ever.
This makes too much sense.
Is there a way we can make this harder and for no reason?
Is there a way in attempting to make this easier we can make it impossibly insane?
Well, I think Uncle Doug can step in and help us out with this.
Doug, do you have a cure for what doesn't ail us?
I indeed do. And we're going to talk about something Mormon.
Yay!
Finally. As we have covered many times on this show, Mormons believe that they are a kingdom unto themselves. This was never truer than in that brief period of time when they were quite literally a kingdom unto themselves.
Yes.
In the very brief period of time between the Mormons settling the Salt Lake Valley in July of 1847, which at the time belonged to Mexico, and the treaty...
it belonged to some Utes and Goshutes, but that's, I guess, neither here nor
let's
nor
not
there.
quibble over who killed who. And then between the settling of Salt Lake Valley, excuse me, and the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, a mere 7 months later, which ended the Mexican-American War and ceded what would become Utah to the United States, which the Mormons had just crossed the Great Plains to get away from.
Right, yeah, and then, they left the U.S., and then the U.S. attacked and took them over.
The U.S. lapped them.
Yeah.
And then Plymouth Rock landed the fuck back on them. Right? So what was that time span? It was literally like 2 years, wasn't it?
No, between
less than a year.
Yeah, between them settling in 1847 and the Treaty of Hidalgo, it was 7 months.
Oh my God.
But it took years for anything to really come of that, but on paper it's laughable.
That is pretty hilarious.
Further complicating the vision of an inland sovereign kingdom, gold was discovered in California.
Gold!
Causing the
Sorry, it's just my natural instincts kick in.
Was that you or was that Methuselah at the Creation Museum?
That was
Methuselah! This caused the California gold rush of 1849, drawing over 300,000 people to California, many of whom would travel right through what Brigham Young had dubbed the state of Deseret. By the way, the word Deseret being derived from the Book of Mormon, meaning honeybee.
Yes.
In what was purported to be the uncorrupted pre-Tower of Babel language.
By the way, did you say Book of Mormon like Kermit the Frog? Mormon. You just went the Book of Mormon.
Why are there so many?
Stop it. Let's please get back on track.
So you may ask yourself, why was an untranslated word in the translated Book of Mormon along with its translated definition? The answer, of course, is
it was because it was in a lion. There were bees in the lion.
That's right.
And a lion bee is called a deseret.
It's
a
just
lion
maths.
bee or a lion bee.
Yeah, exactly.
This is incidentally why the state symbol of Utah is a beehive.
It is indeed.
So the ambition of the dream of an independent inland empire was matched only by the speed with which it disappeared. However, in that brief period, the hubristic dreams of those early Mormons.
Oh, yes.
And although early Mormon leaders very quickly realized that westward expansion would eventually overtake them, for several years they implemented a veritable cornucopia of economic, social, educational, and urban planning initiatives. They had their own militia.
Otherwise known as flops.
Yeah, exactly. A whole bunch of bad ideas.
The only thing they have in common is that they all failed. They had their own...
Not Salt Lake's grid road system.
Oh, God.
That actually works.
I like the grid system. It's just that we have the largest city blocks on the planet.
That's right.
And there's just no point to it, and it's terrible. But other than that, yeah, we got a good grid.
Thanks for the grid, Brigham. So the early Mormons had their own militia, currency, banking system, and, of course, their own views on marriage, which make their current views on marriage not just bigoted, but hypocritical to boot.
Yeah.
It's one of those insane, hubristic, and ultimately doomed ideas that I would like to talk about today. Today we will be discussing the Deseret alphabet.
Yes.
Yay!
This is one of those things that Mormons know a little bit about, ex-Mormons know a lot about,
Yeah.
and non-Mormons have never heard of.
Never heard of. Yeah.
Now, mind you, I would venture to say most Mormons have never heard of this.
Probably.
Most practicing Mormons have no idea about this.
Yeah, and the ones that do probably are listening to this show.
Right.
So the Deseret alphabet was started right after the Mormons settled in Salt Lake in 1847, and it continued until its completion, or at least the first version of its completion in 1854. Although several prominent early Mormons were involved in its creation, it largely was attributed to our dear brother Brigham. It's what's called a phonemic English language spelling reform. Basically, it was an attempt by Brigham and his posse to make English easier to learn for children and non-English speakers, which the Mormons expected would start flooding in from Europe to the east and Indian country to the west.
Yeah, which they had a lot of Europeans coming in to join the Mormons.
Yep.
So it was reasonable to expect that. What isn't reasonable is for a bunch of non-linguistic people to think that they can come up with a new version of how language works.
Exactly.
Well, again, once you think that you're actually a prophet of God, you have a slightly inflated sense of your capabilities, right?
Hey, why can't you do everything?
Exactly.
I don't know.
Well, and of the many stupid things that Brigham Young did in his life, this was one of them. But it at least wasn't nefariously backed. It wasn't like it was an actual attempt to solve a real world problem.
Yeah.
Right. It was not. It was not motivated by evil, which literally might be the only thing he ever did.
That's right.
That wasn't motivated by evil.
And let's be honest, English as a spoken and written language is a fucking mess.
It's a disaster.
Yeah.
If the sentence structure is confusing, the tenses are confusing, spelling is a nightmare.
Yeah.
For example, through, bow, and rough all end in OUGH,
right,
but don't sound remotely the same.
Right.
Pluralization is a mess.
Yeah.
One goose, two geese.
Yeah.
One moose, two mooses. Or one mouse, two mice. One house, two houses.
Yeah.
What the fuck is going on?
Right.
So
yeah, I pity anyone who learned English as a second language. Like English is correct as the first language because you're young and you don't know any better and you have to learn it. But once none of it makes any sense.
Well, if it wasn't for spell check, I think we would all be living in the jungle at this point.
Comb, bomb, and tomb. They
exactly.
Come on.
Exactly. So another reason is said to be the desire to code Mormon literature and correspondence to make it harder for outsiders to understand.
Oh, well, there may have been that.
There may have been that. After all, war with the U.S. was a real possibility at the time. And while this may have been the case, it would have only fooled the laziest and most unconcerned outsider, as although it's not a one-to-one replacement of the Latin alphabet, it's pretty close.
Okay.
The Zodiac cipher, this was not.
Right.
So the alphabet originally consisted of 38 letters, which would kind of morph into 40.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Why do you need more letters?
Well,
because let me tell you something. I have studied phonetics because in my actor training, I had to learn the International Phonetic Alphabet. And English you don't need. I mean, you need. Never mind. I'm not going to get into it.
Well, so each letter is assigned a syllabic value, and when written down alone, it has that value as its name. And that name sometimes is a small word like the.
Oh.
It's the name of this letter is the.
Okay.
But when it's in a word, it loses that value and becomes part of a word. Like W doesn't, when you see W in a word,
right,
it's W instead of W, obviously, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, woo, ye, ha, pee, gee, etc. And Uncle Mark would definitely want me to mention that the sound for gay looks like
an ass with Hitler's haircut. It's true.
A circumcised penis.
No, it looks. To me, it looks like a buttock with kind of a swooping Hitlerian haircut.
It really does,
and it's the only Deseret alphabet sound I know, and I'm taking it to my grave, motherfuckers.
So they weren't going for just a single sound, like a single unit sound,
right?
Like t or p,
right,
or e.
It was more expansive than that. Yeah,
it was.
The wee, who, wah.
So it was, so you'd need, to properly do that, you would need hundreds of combinations.
Well, that's the idea, yes.
Technically.
But this was, so they were trying to do many things.
But they're idiots, so of course they only needed 40, of course.
Right. So anyway, upon its completion and attempted dissemination, Brigham, in his typical humble way, said, quote, The advantages of this alphabet will soon be realized, especially by foreigners. It will also be very advantageous to our children. It will be the means of introducing uniformity to our orthography, and the years that are now required to learn to read and to spell can be devoted to other studies.
Oh,
right on,
nice.
Brigham.
Yes.
So church leaders tried hard to get this alphabet into circulation, but it had its problems. Firstly, nobody cared. Secondly, many early Mormons were barely literate in English. Asking them to learn what was primarily a structural meditation on English sentence construction, spelling, and tense makeup was asking a bit much, and also it was stupid. It was meant to solve several problems at once. It tried to eliminate the many spelling and tense complexities of the English language. It was devoid of, this is crazy, devoid of ascenders and descenders, which are the little squiggly parts of lowercase letters that extend up and down. Right. Think of a lowercase b or a g, which was supposed to save money in the printing of materials.
Wait,
and it was supposed to extend because it would extend the life of metal typeface.
Wait. So there's no upper and lower tense?
There's no upper and lower cases. The
uppercase.
The uppercase of any character in the Deseret alphabet is just bigger.
It's just a bigger version.
It's just a bigger version of it.
Oh my God, that's so dumb.
By the way, I just pulled up an image of the Deseret alphabet.
Yeah, and I would encourage the listeners to do so. There are many.
And N is sort of this backwards lightning-shaped N.
Yeah.
But you put two of them together, and it looks very much like the Nazi SS on the uniforms and stuff. That's kind of spooky.
Well, it's nothing if not a Rorschach test for whatever sick shit is going on in somebody's head. I mean, that's obviously the case, right?
Well, that's true. Because when I looked at that, when I looked at your gay symbol, all I saw was like elephants facing away from me.
It also is a big elephant, yes. So for an alphabet that was made up by a group of guys in a room, one glaring fuck-up was the fact that they didn't include a symbol for the schwa.
Oh, yeah.
And I would like to explain how big a mistake that was, but I have never fully understood the schwa, except that my teachers talked about it a lot in elementary school.
Schwa is just
Yes, it's
just
right.
So it's like if you say the animal, then you've got an E at the end of the. But if you say the mountain, the in the is a schwa.
There you go. You got that, everybody?
Everybody on board?
Schwas.
There will be a test.
This has been Schwa Talk.
So there was a cursive and block version of this alphabet.
I'm going to Google that fucking thing. I'm going to see if there's Schwa Talk. I'll bet there's a podcast.
Talk. Okay.
It'll be our new one.
Talk.
There was a cursive and block version of this alphabet. Cursive being helpful when you're using a fountain pen, not to have to lift it off the paper.
Right.
And when you were in a hurry because you were dying of scurvy. The block letters were meant for the printing press.
Right.
The church did spend some money on typeface, but the alphabet kept changing. and it was estimated that it would cost millions of dollars to reprint all church literature and educational materials. That is probably the biggest reason for its failure. Also, it was stupid. So some devout Mormons gave it a go. Some learned the alphabet enough to write their journals and correspondences in it. Some shopkeepers repainted their signs in it.
Oh, wow.
And a few fanatics even translated the scriptures and other books into it.
Oh.
It was even taught at some schools, but mostly it was a huge and obvious flop. It died fully with Brigham Young when he died in 1877, but it had long since been practically abandoned. So,
except it hadn't been. It had been printed onto it had been stamped onto the money that they printed.
Yeah, it was on currency. Yeah. They tried. They gave it a shot.
Well, and I guess I just gave away the game that the Mormons also printed and stamped their own coins.
That's right.
Of money.
That's right.
They had their own thing. Which, by the way, shout out to Tucker who gave us some replicas of those.
We have
coins.
Some replicas of that. Their money.
Yeah, and it actually explained a lot of those the utter thievery of Brigham Young personally and the church institutionally in taking people's gold and issuing basically issuing basically worthless money to them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's worthless scripts, like irregularly cut out.
Right, yeah, just a scrap of paper that says, this guy gave me $25.
Yeah, exactly.
But
the scrap of paper you would tie to a raven in Game of Thrones.
Or a seagull in Game of Brigham. But if you're interested in the Deseret alphabet and you go to... one strange afternoon, go up to the Daughters of the Utah Pioneers Museum on at the top of Main Street in Salt Lake City.
Yeah,
and they have a Book of Mormon that was entirely printed in the Deseret alphabet. Can you imagine the labor of love that it was?
Yeah. It's bad enough written in its faux 17th century English.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
Now I've got to read it in the Deseret alphabet.
Yeah.
So for former Mormons, the Deseret alphabet is one of those things that is a source of hilarity, derision, and for some reason, a modicum of pride. I don't know.
I totally agree.
Yeah, it's not exotic. Most of the letters look like symbols from higher math or the Cyrillic alphabet.
Yeah.
But most of us know it when we see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you generally see it in ex-Mormon websites or literature and on the occasional tattoo.
That's true. I know. I have a friend who has a tattoo with it on.
And, Mormons don't really have any issue talking about it, but they don't catch them bringing it up very often. However, former Mormons fucking love it, myself included.
Yeah, I love it. And it's the Mormons don't ever like to talk about, stuff we'll talk about another time, like the United Order and the Deseret alphabet, because they don't like to talk about the failures.
Right.
But to me, it's part and parcel with so many 19th century utopian ideas, right?
Yeah.
Mormonism was just one of a baker's dozen of these kind of sects that exploded in the early and mid 19th century, and they all were about, they all had these crazy ideas about the perfect society, and so creating your own alphabet is absolutely, on point.
It was a time of ideas,
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
Well, and not only that, it was a time of ideas, but also a time of trying to separate themselves. They were trying to create a kingdom. They were trying to create their own universe.
That's right.
And eventually,
and for
Marvel
7
and
months
DC
they
won
succeeded.
Out,
yeah.
For 7 glorious months.
There are plenty of Deseret alphabet translators online, and listeners should go and give it a shot. I can guarantee you minutes of fun.
Yes. Uncle Doug, or you sent me and Mark a text
in that alphabet.
In that alphabet, which I didn't even know you could do.
Yeah.
Because you didn't send an image. You sent it. Apparently, the phones understand this alphabet.
I copied and pasted.
Don't know how that works, but I looked down at it and I was like, am I having a stroke? I can't read this. It looks a little like Korean, but I know it's not, and a little like Cyrillic, but I know it's not.
Right.
Well,
and that's a great description.
You should have read it with your spirit eyes.
And that's the key.
So, on a very bizarre side note, the Deseret alphabet was adopted for a time by the micronation of Molossia.
What?
I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, am I? Does anyone know?
Sounds right.
What are you talking about?
Molossia, which is an independent, quote-unquote, nation consisting of 6 acres in Nevada. So this guy founded this nation of Molossia. It's clearly a joke, but for a laugh, go look up Molossia online. The head of state, His Excellency President Kevin Baugh, appears in several pictures in typical tin pot dictator garb, complete with a military hat, sunglasses, sash, and a chest full of medals.
Yep, there he is. I see him. He is the Mayor McCheese of
I
the
love
High
it.
Nevada desert.
Yeah,
I love it.
And there's no relationship between Molossia and the Deseret alphabet aside from the fact that they were both made up.
Yeah.
President Bao just wanted... this is a perfect example of why English is a shit language. Is it Bao? Ba?
I don't know.
Just wanted his signage to look a bit more foreign. So
I love it.
And basically, it is a nation of tough sheds, by the looks of it, done up as rock shops and places to buy fudge.
Well, there you go.
Well, and I figure, Joseph made up a whole book of history.
Yeah.
So Brigham felt like he needed to make up his own alphabet. So he did.
There you go.
So died with him.
The Deseret alphabet died as it lived, being stupid.
Well, thanks, Uncle Doug. Let's move on.
Moving on.